today. But for today's Lunch and Learn, we are going to be covering Agile learning for relevant growth. So in today's Lunch and Learn, we're going to cover the importance of learning. You guys all know that I love my stats. We'll get into a definition of what Agile learning actually entails. And then we'll get into how you can start to create a learning culture. We'll cover Truvelop's approach to learning and then move into some next steps. And I'm also excited to share that for those of you on our call, you're going to get the first preview of Truvelop's brand new Knowledge Center. We decided to go with a different hosting piece just because we wanted to make sure that it is more inclusive, it has more accessibility. That way everybody is able to get the best experience possible with their Knowledge Center and accessing those learning materials. So with that, we're going to start with just some different learning trends that we've been seeing throughout 2023. And these are all definitely going to carry over into 2024 as well. So starting with mobile learning, I don't think this one's very surprising, but learning on the go has definitely become a major trend, especially for organizations that have stayed remote or hybrid, or for a lot of our Truvelop customers. That means that for any of you field workers, anybody who's multi-site, this is always going to be a key piece, just so that you're able to access learning on the go as you go from site to site, as you have your conversations with your people. There's also been a major push for the gamification of learning. So people tend to learn more effectively when the mode for learning is interactive and immersive. I think this is definitely super important, especially so thinking around quizzes, applied learning examples, challenges, and rewards. I think the best app for giving an example of the gamification of learning is Duolingo. I don't know if any of you have used that, but their whole platform is really based on how can we make this fun? How can we make this interactive? Push people from different kind of pieces of motivation, whether that's challenges or stuff like that, but really keeping it fun so that way they want to keep coming back. There's that kind of natural reward feeling each time you log in to do some learning. Another piece is going to be upskilling. So we've talked about this in the past as well, but really thinking about some of those soft skills that are transferable. Those have definitely become highly sought after in the marketplace as demands continue to evolve. And as organizations have started to realize that sometimes our skills are stuff that we can learn on the go, but some of those soft skills, some of those inherent kind of people skills are pieces that are less often to be taught, and pieces that can really help you have somebody who's flexible and can be somebody that you can develop in multiple different avenues. And then the last one here, AI has really hit the mainstream this year. More organizations are really prioritizing just understanding how AI can be a tool for creating some of those more tailored learning priorities and materials. Organizations will definitely going to continue to explore how they can leverage AI in the new year. And one piece to keep an eye on is how this may shift conversations back to productivity, which in my opinion can be sometimes demotivating for employees because it places an emphasis more on just the role that they're filling versus their experience and their impact. So keeping an eye on using AI to maybe increase or improve that employee experience versus just improving productivity. Before we move into any of those stats there, were any of you surprised by some of those learning trends, or is there something else that you feel like should be included in this list? All right, we'll go ahead and move on then. So I have just 5 stats here. These are all from LinkedIn's latest learning report in 2023. Skill sets for jobs have changed by around 25% since 2015. And by 2027, this number is expected to double. So again, kind of going back to that upskilling and that emphasis on soft skills, I think this stat by itself really emphasizes that push for that upskilling piece there. The number one way organizations are working to improve retention is by providing learning opportunities. I don't think anybody on this call would be surprised that the younger generation is leaning more into career development, career opportunities, versus some of those other pieces that might be what we have traditionally seen in workplace values. But so providing those learning opportunities, really showing that investment and development can be a good way to keep your younger employees and really just show overall that this organization cares about your long-term role here with us. You're not just filling that role. We really want to make sure that you have a true career and positive experience with us. Leadership and management skills is the #1 training topic in 2023. I think it became more clear than ever in the past 5 years just how important that manager role is in relationships and retention, especially as kind of that traditional workplace setting has evolved and moved away. People don't work with an entire organization. They typically work with their close team, and that manager is going to be that key piece in defining their overall experience. So organizations are recognizing that and recognizing the amazing influence that a good manager can have. So there's definitely going to continue to be that focus on training for leadership and management skills in 2024 as well. Only 14% of employees said their organization encouraged them to identify a career development plan, and only 26% of employees say their organization challenged them to learn a new skill. These last two stats are really interesting to me, mostly just in that organizations can invest in learning all they want, but if they don't back those actions up, if they don't really explain the why, if coaching and development aren't KPIs for managers, then there's definitely going to continue to be a gap in the overall employees' perceived learning experience. So it's important to draw that connection to say, here are our learning opportunities, here are our training opportunities. I'm having these ongoing one-on-one conversations with you because I want to see you have that growth. I want to see you reach your full potential, and drawing that connection there just to make sure that we have that true bridge for any gaps that the employee might be seeing. So let's go ahead and get into defining Agile learning here. So Agile learning is a continuous and incremental training that helps employees faster adapt to changes in an Agile environment. It helps them become more flexible, adaptable, and increasing their technical and soft skills to better respond to new challenges. So it's not easy for managers to set aside time for robust trainings. Even our lunch and learns can be difficult for managers to attend. So Agile learning really moves away from that traditional bulky training approach and instead really relies on that quick hit learning materials to effectively coach and develop employees and leaders alike. When we encourage kind of that in the moment training, it also encourages employees to take on this mindset of, what am I learning in the moment? Is there something else that I can be taking away from the situation? And really pushing that kind of growth mindset there. Any questions on the definition? Anything you would want to clarify with it? Anything else that you think could be included with this definition here? All right, we'll move on. Hopefully this next piece will get a little bit more interaction here. So let's get into how we actually learn and what our learning landscape looks like. So one piece that we can learn from is from experience. So reflection can be a key driver for identifying key learning takeaways, really kind of thinking about what went well, what would you have done differently, what will you take with you going forward. So would anybody be willing to provide an example of something that they learned from experience that has helped them grow in their position today?
I'll provide, excuse me, an example. And from a human resources perspective, there's three sides to every story. And I had to learn that one through trial and error. Listening to one person and making assumptions about another is not really the right way to go about things. You kind of need to talk to all parties involved and get the bigger picture together before you jump to any possibly illogical conclusions.
Perfect. Thank you, Justin. Anybody else want to share an example of learning from experience there? All right, moving on. Another way that we can learn is from others. So whether that's learning from others' experiences or really just inspiring that culture of learning by asking your team to share what they've learned, what's been working well for them. Is there anything that they're struggling with that someone else could help with? Does anybody have an example of something that they've learned from someone else that has helped them to positively impact their experience?
Juliana, I'll jump in on that one.
Okay.
One thing I've actually learned from working with both you and Meryl is that there are very different needs for both of you and for what your desires are, how you want your work experience to feel like, what you want it to look like. The things that motivate you are very different than the things that motivated me over the last 25, 30 years. And that's a generational thing, obviously. But I've had to learn to adapt from working with you and what's going to best inspire you to stay, to enjoy your job. And it is all around this continuous learning concept.
That was a very meta example of like, how do we like to learn, and sharing that and learning about the different learning experiences. I think this is also an important takeaway here, is just that by having these ongoing learning conversations, obviously that also then increases team engagement, team trust, building those relationships there, talking about shared experiences is a really great way to, one, make sure that nobody feels isolated, nobody feels that they don't have that support, but also pushing those then learning takeaways from that as well. And then our last piece here for just shaping our learning landscape is learning for the future. So by identifying any gaps in skills or talent today can then shape what we're seeking to learn going forward. So really thinking about learning with a purpose allows for that greater agility and resilience. So thinking about today, where do we have that greatest room for improvement? What do we really want to focus on for a learning experience? Then gives you the opportunity to ask the right questions versus just kind of asking questions into the abyss and hoping that people get something out of it. So now I want to talk a little bit about Truvelop's approach to learning, because I think it's a little bit different than what a lot of other organizations or platforms think about when it comes to performance development. So one piece for us is, I'm sure you hear this all the time from us, is that it's not just about collecting data, it's really what you do with that data that matters. So really learning the skills to coach your team based on their current needs and learning on the go so that you don't have to be that master of everything all at once. It's really about learning based on what your team is going to need in the moment right now. With that too, really using the tools that you have. There are a huge variety of resources that we have in our Knowledge Center that range from really kind of high level summaries to here are specific questions to ask for this specific scenario. So it ranges in how prescriptive a manager or a leader might need. So with that, use it as a crutch until you're confident that you can run. There is no specific rule on how you should be learning, how you should be using the materials that you have. It's all about using it in an impactful way and using it to drive those relationships with your team and learning in a way that's going to not be overwhelming. It's going to be digestible. It's going to be relevant. And it's going to build that confidence over time of, hey, I used this resource today and I was able to apply it. Here's what went well. Here's what didn't go well. Here's what I'm going to go do differently going forward. And then starting to build those skills over time so that eventually you don't always need to go back and look up how to have that tough conversation. So I did want to leave us with some next steps before I show our preview of the new Knowledge Center. So thinking about kind of just 3 steps for using learning takeaways here, starting with that reflection point. So reflecting on the past year of what key milestones have been achieved, what strengths have helped you meet those goals, what obstacles were you able to overcome? Are there any barriers to your success? So again, kind of thinking about that learning for the future piece. By identifying what's going well today or where we have those major gaps, we can start to be really intentional in what we want to learn and start to ask those right questions there. So with that then too, moving into this identify piece, identify those greatest gaps. What skills, if developed, would have the greatest positive impact on your performance and experience? Again, we don't have to learn everything all at once. It's really about learning what's going to be the most helpful for you right now. That keeps it from being overwhelming, and it makes sure that this is digestible, that we have that kind of purpose and intention with going into it. Personally, when I have a game plan, I feel a lot better about going into any kind of large next step. So by having that identified, by breaking out those kind of OKRs for getting our learning goals met, that's going to be a good place to start. And then this last piece is actually committing to those learning goals. So what will you do to develop these skills, and when will you develop those skills by? So committing to an identified development plan and being willing to make adjustments as needed is going to be key for actually hitting those next steps. And memorializing this as a spark is a good place to start. So especially as a manager, if you and your team are meeting for the end of the year, thinking about those next steps there, talking about what do we really want to focus on in the new year. By memorializing that with that spark, then we can start to share some of those training resources along the way. We can start to revisit those conversations quarter over quarter, see what we've learned and what we still need some extra time on to continue to develop. So with that, let me switch screens here and show our soon to be new knowledge center. So again, just kind of to recap why we decided to go with a different platform here is one piece is just that it's going to be more inclusive. One of the biggest barriers that we experienced with our former platform was that it was really difficult to make it more accessible, to make it in different languages. And so with our new platform, we're going to have a lot of different options for how we want this to look, how we want people to experience it. So it can be translated into a number of different languages. We're starting with just a few based on kind of feedback that we've gotten of different languages that employees speak with our customer base today, but we can always add more as needed. Another piece with this is that I feel like this is going to be much more user-friendly just in terms of actually accessing the materials. It's a lot easier to search the knowledge base. And then once you get into each of these little resources, it's going to look a lot cleaner. So you're able to go in and access all of these different articles and easily kind of get into all the same content that we've had previously, but it's just going to be displayed in a different way and make it a lot easier to digest the information that you need. So this is still in the works right now, but it is coming soon and we're super excited about it and are looking forward to getting your feedback on your experience in it and making sure that, again, that it's accessible, it's user-friendly, and that it is hitting all of our Truvelop values and it being inclusive and really driving that easy learning experience. Before I let you all go, any feedback, any thoughts about what we talked about today? I realize that this was a super quick one, but all about Agile learning, making our quick hit resources available to you. I'll open it back up to all of you.
Juliana, I'd love to hear too if there are any resources that we are definitely missing. Is there anything that as the individuals on the phone have gone through the Knowledge Center and looked for different tools and resources, what is missing? What is that kind of like, gosh, I wish there was this resource or that resource? Any feedback from any of you all?
I can't think of anything that's missing personally, but I can't speak for all.
All right. Well, if there's not anything else, I'll let you all go, but I appreciate your participation today. And obviously we'll share our recap, expect the toolkit next week. And we'll talk to you all hopefully again next month.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
There we go. So I'm trying to utilize this program for, the supervisors on my staff and whatnot. It's not allowing me to do anything with them. Sorry, just as I start talking, of course, my phone's gonna ring.
Ryan, you're with Vanaken Group, right?
That's right.
Let me pull up your profile real quick, because it might just be that right now you don't have direct reports in the system. We've been
I'm
doing
showing
it.
I got 4 in here,
4 in there.
but it's not allowing me to activate them.
Let me take a look. Yep, I can see that you have your 4 direct reports in there. You're in the manager role. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording so that we can talk about